Welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you're new to it. I thought I'd do something just a little different with this video. I wanted to go through and give you a state of the shop, some update on what I've been up to, and maybe do this every once in a while if you like these videos. And so in this video, I'm going to cover what I've gone over the last couple weeks. If you've been following my Instagram side, my stories and stuff like that, a little over a week ago, I went to WorkBench Con. WorkBench Con is a conference that mostly makers, wood makers, and woodworkers and makers and other people that are also content creators get together, and they talk about both making, woodworking, and content creation, and swap ideas and ways to help with the content creation and get the information across, and also just a bigger network of making friends. So I got to see a bunch of people that I've seen in the past, and a whole bunch of people that were brand new, and it was just a way to kind of unwind, share stories, and get ideas. So that took up most of 2 weeks ago, and just before I was leaving, I was working on a new epoxy bowl. Some of you may remember the blue heart bowl that I did. I'll see if I can put that up in one of the corners so you know what I'm talking about. So 2 weeks ago, I had started on doing what I call the drip stock. I'll put a little video together on how I do this, which is basically the part of the bowl that I carved into so that I can put the epoxy in there, let the epoxy get hard, and then I carve the bowl around it. So I got that done at the end of last week. I finished it up right when I got back from WorkBench Con earlier this week, and let me show you what that looks like. Here's what the bowl looks like. I'm pretty happy with it. It's made out of a glue up of white oak and maple, and then what I did was I carved into the top of this glue up. In fact, let me show you what the glue up looked like before I started the process. So let me show you what the glue up looked like before I started the process. So this is what the block of material looks like when I start out. So I have this maple and I have this white oak, glued it together. It's a little over 5 inches square, think like 5 1/4 inches. And then what I do is I carve what they call a drip stock, where I can pour the epoxy in there. So once that's carved, then I go ahead and pour epoxy in there. In this case, I used some of the information I got from Jake Thompson when I visited him, and then followed up with him on how I had to pour that so the colors wouldn't just all blend in with each other, and that's how I got the strips of color. This was all done on the CNC, which is pretty cool. When you think about it, it looks like it was something that was turned on a lathe. I'll do a video on this if I get interest in it. Let me know in the comments section if you want to see a full project video. This is going to be a potpourri bowl like some of the other bowls. Let me show you what it looks like with the potpourri screen on it. Boy, I have a hard time saying that word. So this is how the screen sits on there. So I got everything sized just perfect. And now the next step I have to do this week is to go around and shine this thing up. So I was trying to figure out the best way to sand it. Obviously, I have my sanding mop, my surf prep sander, and others, but I thought the best way to do this would be to go ahead and sand this and finish it. I want to make this epoxy pop on the rim, and I thought the best way to do that was to do it with a lathe, if I could. I've got a lathe. I haven't used it in a year or two, and it's about time that I give it a shot. So that's what I'm doing, and talked to a couple people to get advice on the best way to be able to do that on the lathe, and this is what they suggested. So you can see the little area right here for a chuck to grab onto. So my friend, who's an expert turner, used a parting tool and put that little lip in there in the bottom of the bowl so the chuck can go on it, and it doesn't impact the functionality at all. It kind of looks kind of cool, actually. So that'll sit right down nice and flat when I'm done. But for now, I can put it on my lathe, chuck onto it, and then I can go ahead and do the outside and the inside and sand it up and polish it. I believe that's a perfect solution. Let me show you how that's going to work. So remember, I've got the area here to chuck on. I've got my chuck in my lathe. I'm going to put it right over that area to chuck onto, and then I'm going to just go ahead and tighten down on my chuck. Make sure everything's nice and flush and tight. And now I'm going to be able to sand this whole outside, the top, and inside just like when I made pins on this thing. And I'm really kind of excited to see how it turns out. I'm hoping I can get this epoxy to pop a little better. And the next one I make, I'm going to make a little different shape, but I'll make sure I put that chuck in the bottom of it, and I'm going to make the epoxy a little bit deeper. I'm not quite sure what color it's going to be. I will show in this video, let me show you a little snippet of my friend, just how fast he put that chuck holder in there.
And what I like to do is so that the chuck, once they have that, so when that chuck's in there like that, these little things will hook on. If you cut it back in that angle, it'll catch under that lip a little bit and hold it much more secure. Just cut out a little bit like that, make a little channel out there like that.
That just gives it a little better grip. So what else have I been up to? Before I left for WorkBench Con, you may remember I was working on a framing sled, if you watch my stories. Now, I haven't put anything out on YouTube on this, maybe a short. I can't remember what I put out as shorts. But this is a framing sled because about last month I started doing several laser engraved pictures, and I still need to put a video out on how I do these and share with you guys how I get these results. These are AI pictures I generated with artificial intelligence, and then I went through a process with ImageR to get them set up perfect for the laser, and they seem to be laser engraving really good when I get done. There's one example. There's another. I already made a couple frames, but I found it a little more difficult than it needed to do my Engraved sled over there. So I went looking for a solution that a friend of mine told me about, and I found Dave Picciuto's MakeSomething YouTube video about 4 years ago, but it came in really handy. And then Mike Ohm did one, and then there were a couple other people, so Mike Ohm built onto Dave's a little bit. That's what I used. I used Dave's idea and captured it, tried to apply it, and I'm slowly adding little things to it based on it being 4 years later and the fact that I have a 3D printer, and Dave didn't have that at the time. So the first thing I did and worked on over this last couple weeks was this stop block. And so now I have this stop block that was 3D printed, and even cooler was that I inserted a metal insert for screws, which makes it easy. And so that's another thing that I did this last week, was I received a soldering iron. It's made for putting in inserts, and it sits on a table. It makes it easy to put the inserts in, and so that's working out real well. And I had this week to be able to do that. I still need to make a 3D handle for this that goes on this nut, so I'm not just doing that. I want to make it fancier. I need to make it a little lighter, and so I'm going to cut a little bit off. That's what Mike Ohm did in his video. And I think because of the ability of having the 3D prints, I think I may actually make some 3D handles on here to make it easier to use. One other thing I did, because I have a 3D printer, I 3D printed the miter slots. So that was really helpful. Let me show you what I mean. So I 3D printed the miter slots, and one of the problems that both Dave and Mike talked about was it being tippy because of the heaviness of the sled, and because I 3D printed these, I was able to actually take and print T-track in there. So I have a lip down that, so that stops it from tipping up. So more to work to do on this. It took a couple iterations to try to get the 3D block right, but now it's right and it's sliding real well. Here's what the insert soldering iron looks like for putting inserts into the 3D prints. You simply put your print down here with the starter hole, heat it up, and then press it down into the 3D print. It works easy peasy, handy dandy. Really like it. And I'm looking forward to using this more and more on my 3D prints. Another thing I 3D printed is this right here. Does anybody know what that is? Well, Tom Caney was the one that suggested I could 3D print it, and I almost bought this a while ago, but this is a straight edge adapter for putting on your Festool sander. So when you put this on your Festool sander, then when you're sanding, it keeps a nice 90-degree edge on it. So I'm looking forward to mounting that on my Festool sander in the next week or so. I just haven't gotten around, and I'm going to use some metal inserts in here to screw it together. I just haven't gotten around to doing that yet. And you can see I ran out of filament almost towards the end here, so I switched up filament, made this out of PETG, and I'll update you in future videos on how that's working out. So now that I got the picture sled made, I had to glue up some material to go ahead and make some picture frames. So that's what these are. I glued up material, there's those pictures. They'll sit in here just like this, and I'll put a frame around them, and I'll give you a report out in one of the future videos, a short or something, on how easy it was, or not, to use that framing sled to go ahead and make these picture frames. I'm thinking it's going to cut the time down quite a bit and improve my accuracy in my miters. What do you think? So this is going to be enough wood for one frame, and this is enough wood for another frame, and then if I need more, I'll glue them more up in the future. Another thing I've been working on is another cribbage board. I had a custom cribbage board order 2 weeks ago. I got that knocked out, and as soon as I was finishing that up, I got another one. And so the first step in that is gluing up the material so you have a nice decorative block of material to carve your cribbage board in. So I just finished this glue up. I started the glue up yesterday, finished it up today, finished sanding it, and now I have the next thing. The other thing that I have to do is the top, which I make out of maple, and then I laser engrave an image on that. That glue up was just done this afternoon. And so it's going to dry. Tomorrow it will be ready for me to finish sanding off and making sure it's nice and flat and everything is nice and tight. And then I will carve that on the CNC, and I'll take it from the CNC to the laser, and I'll put the picture that the customer wants on that. He wants the same picture, sailboat and Coronado Bridge, that I had on the cribbage board that I entered into the San Diego Fair and won third place for. Some of you may remember that I would always have a fence on the left side and a fence down here on the bottom so that I could do my multicolor epoxy and always have the zero in the same place. There wasn't any major problem, but the problem with that was whenever I would take it off, I'd have to go through straightening and everything else. And having watched several videos out there, many people are using these dog holes in a grid. And so what I did was I went ahead and made dog holes in my spoiler board. I'll try to put out a video on that later. And I started to use these PVC, these 20 millimeter PVC pipes. And I found that when I put too much pressure on them, they would compress more than I liked, especially if you're doing 3D prints, multicolor prints with the epoxy. You need to be really tight tolerances. So I decided that instead of doing that, I could 3D print. I'm loving my 3D printer. Some that were very solid that didn't have that flex. And so I've replaced those dog holes, the PVC ones, with these printed ones, and they're working out real good so far. So I'll keep you up to date on what I do with those dog holes, and if I continue to like them. If not, I can always plug them or put a new spoiler board on there. But so far I'm liking them. As you can see, I've been pretty darn busy over the last few weeks between modifying my CNC spoiler boards, making multiple cribbage boards, their lids, and looking up good graphics to put on them, several glue ups, those epoxy bowl, that epoxy bowl that I'm still finishing up, and just a ton of things, and getting out to Atlanta to visit with a bunch of friends. So I'll keep you in touch with what's going on in the shop. I'll also keep making project videos. I'm trying to figure out what the best type of project videos would be beneficial to each of you in the next near future. I'm thinking about creating a series of videos where I go through the basics of Vectric VCarve Pro, maybe one tool at a time, or some helpful hints on things that I do to make the process easier and more repetitive and more accurate, so that I don't get so frustrated sometimes. So if there are things you would like to see on VCarve Pro or Aspire that you haven't been able to find the videos on, or you think you'd like to have clarified, why don't you give me a comment? Let me know what you'd like to see a video on, and I can start thinking about doing some of those videos on a more regular basis. My project videos just seem to be taking too long. First, it takes all the time to work on the project, then videotape it, then edit it, because I'm not the best videographer there is. And so let me know in the comments below the following. 1, was it worth your time to watch this video and see what's going on in the shop? Do you even care? And 2, comments on things you'd like me to do a video on relative to Vectric VCarve Pro software or Aspire. With that, have a nice day until we meet in this medium again.